Welcome to the Two Boots Word Vault podcast. This episode is a recording from April 27th, 2019, when my good friend Thomas R. Smith and I read poems at the Como Cottage Salon series. Thomas and I go way back, and it's always good to read poems with Thomas. Welcome to Como Cottage Salon. This is salon number
379.
not quite, but what is it? This is number 92.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
And it's the last one of this season. I'm setting up for next year, and I got Louis Jenkins coming in. We're trying to work out a date. And then, of course, Mimi, you and Len haven't been here before, so we do poetry, storytelling, and music. What else do I got to tell you?
Books in the back.
Huh?
Books.
There's some books there, yeah. Books for sale. Refreshments. We're gonna each take about 20 minutes to start. So. The other part is that because I'm a poet, when we have music, there's always at least one poem. And when there's poetry, we always have at least one song. And so tonight, Dallas, because she's the musician in the family, she's going to play a piece before we start. Are you ready, Dal?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll start with Dallas, and then Thomas is going to read first for 20 minutes, and then I'll follow that. Let me get this thing started.
Okay, start over.
Yeah, what are you going to play?
I'm doing a medley of, one's from the Pearl Fisher opera. One's from the series, I forget what it was called.
Foyle's War.
Foyle's War.
Oh,
Yeah. So.
that together as an overture for a storytelling event, and there was a couple pieces in there that were also her compositions. Are you all set to go, Mr. Thomas Smith?
All I have to do is stand up.
Okay, well, I will stand up, and Thomas and I go back to, what, 1981? 81. You were still living on Marshall when I met you. John Krumberger and I were in graduate school, and he brought me over to a poetry group that you were in. And I think 81, and you were, if not the first, you were first or second person to be on my radio show on KFAI.
I remember that.
The Northland Literary Review.
Right. In the old Walker Church.
Yeah. And we've been doing stuff together ever since. So you all know Thomas. No, I don't think you know Thomas.
I think I saw you.
Yeah, you've been here.
Because I used to be able to be off on Saturday
Right.
when you guys first started.
Right.
And I started working on it.
Yeah. The only poet that I've known longer than Thomas is John Krumberger. So
Really?
yeah.
Wow.
But anyway, for a long time, because of our affiliation with Robert Bly and the men's conference, Thomas and I were both living in Wisconsin, but everybody called us the Minnesota Twins. So
Something wrong with that reception.
Thomas is, I can't say enough for my appreciation for his work, his devotion to poetry, his devotion to the poetry of others, and what he has done for the poetry community, not only here in the Midwest, but nationally and internationally. I always feel honored to be standing next to him. Yeah. So anyway, I'll let Thomas do his thing from his new book, Windy Day at Como Cottage Salon. Do you need some?
Is there a clock?
Here, you want that?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, just to keep track here.
Yep.
So I'm going to give you about 20 minutes of prose poems. I've just recently collected some of my better prose poems from previous books and about half new stuff into this book called Windy Day at Cabacona. So I think I'm going to skip some of my introductory prose poem remarks tonight because if this puzzles you, it's probably fertile puzzlement here with this group. I can kind of tell. So I'm just gonna jump into it. And what I've been doing is starting readings from this book with a prose poem by someone who I admired and who inspired me to write these when I started writing them in the 70s. Big part of that for me was spending a little time in France, picking grapes in the Beaujolais, just kind of bumming around and finding out from the young French grape pickers that I was working with how much they revered their national poets, and they weren't only into the new ones, they were into the 19th century ones like Baudelaire and Rimbaud. So who I had never read. So as soon as I got back to the States, being a typical American monolingual ignoramus, I went out and bought a bunch of translations of these poets. That's still about the speed I'm at, but I still really love these poems. And this is a Baudelaire. And this translation is by Louise Vervace. It's called Get Drunk. One should always be drunk. That's the great thing. The only question. Not to feel the horrible burden of time weighing on your shoulders and bowing you to the earth. You should be drunk without respite. Drunk with what? with wine, with poetry, or with virtue, as you please, but get drunk. And if sometimes you should happen to awake on the stairs of a palace, on the green grass of a ditch, in the dreary solitude of your own room, and find that your drunkenness is ebbing or has vanished, ask the wind and the wave, ask star, bird, or clock, ask everything that flies, everything that moans, everything that flows, everything that sings, everything that speaks. Ask them the time, and the wind, the wave, the star, the bird, and the clock will all reply, "It is time to get drunk." If you are not to be the martyred slaves of time, be perpetually drunk, with wine, with poetry, or with virtue, as you please. Probably poetry and virtue are the big ones for us tonight. Just guessing. Okay, so that was.
I don't know about the virtue part.
It depends on how you define virtue. So Tim mentioned Robert Bly, who was really our teacher back, way back. And when I first started writing these poems in the early 70s, or late 70s actually, I just out of the blue, I sent one to Bly and said, "Well, what do you think about this?" And he gave me a really encouraging reply, but it was somewhat mysterious. There's a figure here of a blind girl that was just totally out of my imagination. These things are all images out of my imagination. And what he said was, he said, wait a while, and you'll find out who she is. Well, that was very encouraging, so I kept on writing. But this is the poem. It's called Eyes. And I was really trying to be mysterious at that time, and now I'm trying to be clear. That's the difference in 40 years. Eyes. Shadows topple through the streets as if buildings were falling. Trucks and delivery vans roll over the wishes of the dead. Rusted plow blades flop over in the graves. There is enough left alive in the slain deer's skull to die again. Campfires are seen in the windows of office complexes. Who is the blind girl no one stops for at the intersection? They drive through her, leaving faint marks on her yellow dress. Her face is a white candle. Pressed flowers fall from her mouth. She was born in a bare room and then walked out one morning in winter, her tears breaking on the pavement like glass birds. No one sees her. There's someone she will never marry. But Bly said, yeah, wait a few years, you'll find out who she is.
Have you found out?
What's that?
Have you found out?
Yeah, pretty much. So I was about 30 when I wrote that. A few years down the line, I actually did get married, and Krista and I spent some honeymoon time in Spain, especially Barcelona. And we used to go to a very beautiful but incredibly affordable Catalan music hall in Barcelona. It's fantastic. It's a monument of Art Deco interior, just unbelievable place, magical. So this was from one of the concerts there. It's called The Soprano, and I think it links up to that first poem that I read of mine. The Soprano. The conductor brings up violins behind the heavy-breasted woman. Tonight she is singing Four Last Songs by Strauss. Her knees bend. She lists to one side like a boat on the Rhine. Notes stream upward, almost inaudibly, a breeze stirring among oak leaves or the sounds river ice makes in early spring. Suddenly, what was listened for so carefully is loose in air, passion declared after years of concealment, a storm arriving on a clear day. In a valley, sunlight flees the ripened clusters of grapes. So many not tasted, paintings never seen, cities that waited for us, and we did not come. The audience feels fear beneath the intoxicating melody. In the voice's distillation is a summing up, a precise accounting of its existence, a rose fully open in this room. The hearer glimpses not only the strength and subtlety of the soul, but its dark seams also niches of character, dislocations, and failings. How difficult it is to be a woman, the grief of the new life turning in her earthen body. And then, how difficult it is to be human. The man is inside the woman, and the woman inside the man, and they have never met. Okay, so those are your clues. So I think I was really, really kind of sensing the probably the feminine part of myself in the early poem, getting a little more clear about who that was in a second. So I probably told you way more than you need to know. This is a different tone here. Prose poems are really good for little sketches of scenes and people. I don't know what it is, but it kind of lends itself to really capturing the quirks of a moment. I was out in northern Wisconsin in the small town where I grew up one year. This is probably somewhere in the late 80s or early 90s. You can kind of tell from some of the cultural references, or maybe not. But my brother is an old rock and roller, and he was playing with a bunch of early middle-aged buddies of his in a bar out in the country that night. So this is that scene. So from the musical sublime to this. It's called Hard Rock Farmers. Saturday night at the tavern on the corner where the highway turns north, middle-aged bar band veterans crank deafening rock and roll from speakers stacked 10 feet tall. I'm not exaggerating. It's a little room about this big. No, they can't hear anymore, those guys. The regulars are less interested in fighting than in tapping each other playfully on the chest pockets of their bib overalls while hoisting a Leinenkugel's big butt in a Marlboro, or dancing goat-like from the waist down to the band's crashing rhythms. Their children have flown via the internet. On the jukebox, there are CDs by Mojo Nixon and Social Distortion, lots of baseball caps, though none worn backwards. Despite the occasional woman, say a fine-boned, big-haired blonde in a white leather jacket, pretty specific, huh? This watering hole, she's probably the only woman in there, this watering hole clearly belongs to the men. After a week of machinery repairs, milking, trying to hold the world together that everyone knows is spinning out of control, they relax by taking into themselves a bit of the destructive element. At midnight, the tiny building, crowded by pickup trucks and cornfields, vibrates on its foundation, gathering momentum to join the exodus from Earth.
Okay, good one.
So, right around the turn of the millennium. Now, is that really true? Is it that long ago? Yeah, I think it is, right around the turn of the millennium. Tim and I were part of this ragtag expedition to go down and show the guys in Louisiana how to have a proper men's conference. So this is a scene from this trip. And by the way, this happened right at the end of Mardi Gras.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
So turn the boy loose here, right? On the road to New Orleans, 15 hours out from Minneapolis. Jim Miller and I stand at the counter in a neon service plaza near Senatobia, Mississippi. It's a rainy Sunday morning. I've newly crossed the divide of 50. Jim is 4 years out in front of me. Both of us feel every minute of our age. After an all-night drive in a van with 6 other men. Now, having splashed our faces to a semblance of waking in the restroom, our rumpled unshavenness is on display to the politely dressed after-church crowd, and more embarrassingly, to the teenage girl with pale blonde hair and beaded choker at the cash register. So, before either Jim or I can complete a sentence, she chirps, "So what brings you all this far south?" Mardi Gras, we lie. That requiring so much less explanation than a mythopoetic men's conference. I should have known. Why, you all look like a couple of party animals. Jim grins through his grizzled beard and I through salt and pepper stubble, well knowing that the only kind of animal we could reasonably claim to resemble after our night in the van is roadkill possible. Still, the compliment has staying power. The rest of that day, I think of the girl young enough to be our southern granddaughter to either of us, and how with an indulgent joke, she unzipped the husk of middle years from 2 raring-to-go boys on a rocky Sunday morning on the road to rockin' New Orleans. All right. So I got time for at least a couple more here. So I have fun with these too. You know, they're not all serious. I'm going to do one called Rice Lake Burial Mounds. Rice Lake is, in this poem, is the Rice Lake that's just past the 694 belt line when you leave heading up to St. Cloud. There's a rest area on the south side of the freeway there. I haven't been there lately. I don't know if there's still access to this or not, but this was one day when we were traveling back from up north in the summer. Rice Lake Burial Mounds. Hot evening at the end of a day's travel. Condensation from air conditioning drips under parked cars at the rest stop. My shirt unsticks from my back as we walk, in a breeze like weak tea. The path leads farther than one would expect, past the toilets and woods, scrubby and littered enough to suggest illicit meetings and drug deals. Strangely, we're walking only a few yards from the shoulder of the freeway. On our right, dust clouds from a denuded field, where bulldozers scuff and rumble. Here on the path, some large machine trampled and dragged branches, which lie crushed and green-smelling. Just ahead of the mounds, a dozen or so feet tall, overgrown, fenced in. The plaque says that the people who built them lived between 800 and 1700, hunting, fishing, and farming around Rice Lake, which we can glimpse from this slight elevation, sparkling hazily across the freeway. There's not much here, but some leafy hillocks in the shaded quiet of a cul-de-sac, surrounded by concrete and concrete to be. Still, a presence of some sort offers itself in the deepening shadows. To fully partake, one would have to clear away the mechanical noise and frenzy, to live as the dwellers in this place once did. Before them, I feel a loss and shame, but also a twinge of awe, thinking of the old ones who've lain in these mulchy hillocks, some of them for 1,000 years. Turning back toward the car, we still hear bulldozers working overtime to scrape more land bare for houses, for commuters who will buy more gasoline to operate their minivans to make more oil wars necessary. But for a moment, the mound's strength overrides all of that, settles on my spirit like a memory of some glory that has left the world. An intense, horizontal copper red beads through the tree line. Where we have been, we were not alone. Let's see what we got here. No time for one more here. I'm gonna go out on that kind of more serious note. We'll play some different tunes when we get to the second part here. Anybody's guess what we're gonna do. So one of the things I really love in the prose poem literature is the work of Francis Ponge, French poet, who wrote about objects. He wrote object poems. He was philosophical, scientific in his orientation, and also very playful. So Bly got us writing these things, and they're fascinating explorations of physical things. So this is just one little rock I picked up somewhere and started to write a prose poem about it, broken stone. So you can hear in this maybe a little. This is a pretty recent poem. You can hear toward the end of it maybe a little embedded suggestion of social or political commentary. A broken stone. The stone has several walls, at least 8 or 9, depending on how you count certain angled declivities. To further confuse matters, some are dark and some are light, as if a shell or veneer of a rusty tan color has been shucked or shocked from the stone's exterior to reveal a thoroughgoing darkness. On closer examination, it's evident that the stone's interior gloom isn't unrelieved. Tiny glittering particles, like sawdust or brown snow, swirl the night sky of the stone. At this point, the eye asks what exactly it's seeing. Primordial organisms swimming in the first dark ocean? Intimations of galaxies beyond counting in the farthest range of our best telescopes. Ask instead which vision best suits the human scale. The answer, something in between. Light flecks lying upon the face of the darkness as grass seed lies scattered on black soil, as if some greenness is waiting to grow there. Held between the thumb and fingers, the stone undergoes a miraculous transformation, as though a premonition of an entirely different existence it may know after being broken down, the ultimate end of all stone, reduced to the life-giving grains of mineral nourishment a grassroot can absorb. To those who despair of the hardness of certain hearts and fates in the present moment, I say, one day, even this stone will become a nurturer of grass. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna read some poems I've never read before. These are poems I worked on last year and have been playing with them, and I took inspiration from Robert Bly's Guzzle poems, where each stanza in that form is a different set of images, and it's all connected into through me as the poet. And I was trying to figure out how I can describe this. And this morning I'm thinking, oh, these are like core samples of the soul, of my soul. So that each stanza is a different vein, a different line going back. Because I connect, it starts with a picture, a painting. I needed something to prime my pump. And so I started with some paintings by Andrew Wyeth. And once I got going, I ended up doing about 120 of these things last year. And I've been polishing them and tinkering with them. But I'll give you an example right off the bat. Each stanza is 3 lines. Some of them are 6 stanzas, some are 4, some are 7, but most of them are 6 or 5. And this is from the painting by Andrew Wyeth called In the Orchard. And these are from the Helga paintings. If you remember, in the 1980s, this book came out with all of these pictures of Helga that he had been painting in secret for years. Helga was his model and his neighbor. And it was a scandal at the time. Everybody's playing games, trying to figure out, are they lovers? You know, is he doing it behind his wife's back? What's going on? And it actually sold a lot of books. But they're exquisite, just exquisite pictures. And so the first one that I'm going to read is called In the Orchard. An orchard is always holy. Orchard Avenue was the cross street near my childhood home. Behind our house, the city built a playground on a de-sanctified Swedish cemetery. And a picture of its oak trees remains with me. But an orchard is always holy. Wyeth spoke of holiness. He said, the communion that has seeped into the subconscious will eventually come out in the final picture. In dry brush watercolors, Helga stands in snow, or she lounges among leaves in summer, or walks past a skeletal, unpruned tree. Because many drafts were penciled, sometimes she's a ghost. My farm included orchards, sour cherries and winter apples. Across the road, toothless Erickson's old-growth woods could have been the picture of an ancient Mississippian Eden. There are no serpents in Wyeth's orchard, only trees, leaves, an undressed woman on a limb, or leaning against a tree trunk, or atop a grassy green knoll. She is always pictured alone. You've spent many hours alone, Timothy, or so you thought. And you always tried to picture the sources for seasonal glory, abundant fruit, and the ever-present orchard keeper. So, some of these start in one place and move through. Here's another one from the Helga pictures. And this is called Loden Coat. And in this series, I use the word coarse in each stanza, which is often part of the old Sufi ghazals or Bly's ghazals. Loden Coat. This has been a snowy winter. Our yard ewes are capped in white, coarse, dirt-laced ice and compacted snow slowly melt in the driveway. It's been a long winter. The beauty of new fallen snow was fleeting. Today's standard of beauty is a TV weather woman with coarse red lips, swaying and forecasting blizzards with her chatty trepidations. In Wyeth's picture, Helga walks with no time for chatty trepidations. She strides up a snowy drive toward a fenced-in 3-story farmhouse. Her gait is coarse, lumbering, and determined. A working walk in her snow boots and loading coat. Her purse is a satchel, not a designer clutch. Yesterday, I noticed that the maple buds have not begun to open. They remain as tight as the coarse opinions of a dry drunk. Sweet sap can't rise from the roots until the tree spreads itself for the new warmth. A CD counselor said, because alcoholics suffer slight brain damage, they see the world as black and white. It's a coarse generalization. Yet the cravings for blessedness throw them onto the snow pile of certainty. Timothy, your grandfathers were both drunks and couldn't give love. One was a mean cop in a coarse town, the other a shell-shocked vet. Both stumbled through life's snowfields, and then they ambled into paradise. Get it. A couple other ones here. After I went through all of Andrew Wyeth's chapters in the book of Helga, I wanted to keep on going. I was all fired up. And so I went and found illustrations by his father, N.C. Wyeth, and I found his book, or his illustrations for Treasure Island by Stevenson. Again, it brought a whole new dimension to what I was writing about. And so this is called Goodbye Mother. Jim Hawkins is shipping out, and his mother's face is in her apron. The blue sky behind their ochre house with its greenish hue intensifies Wyeth's manipulation. Treasure Island is a boy's tale. 49 years ago this week, I quit work and school to hitchhike around the country. Unlike young Jim, I didn't have a patron or a seafaring job awaiting me. I went alone into the unknown. Years later, my mother said she cried when I left, and she said she couldn't let me see her that way. My father had reminded her, it's natural for a boy to leave home and seek adventure. I found mountains and deserts for the first time. I tasted salt water. I slept in small tree groves and fallow fields just beyond the highway. I found my great uncle, who took me to my grandfather's boyhood home. When a boy like Jim Hawkins leaves for the outer world, tears may cleanse everyone's eyes. His mother remains like a tree, spread limbs, bark, heartwood, and his inner world finds roots. My mother said, when your brothers left, I didn't cry. It's just that you were the first. I had to learn to let it happen. Next Sunday is Mother's Day. I'll think of her past now 5 years. These poems or these pictures pile up and send me someplace, and I don't know where it's going. And there were synchronicities that popped up all through the whole year. This was right before Mother's Day. It was on the day, the anniversary of the day I started hitchhiking, and I didn't realize, it just was one of those synchronicities.
Wow.
After I finished working with Wyeth, I was still excited. I was still cranked. So I went and I took another one of my art books, and these were the pictures, cave paintings in the Lascaux caves from 20,000 BC. And so each picture, each painting through the book, I was able to find something to write about. So this one is called The Heads of Two Cows. And this one, of course, it turns out is on Nicholas Abner Young's birthday, one of my grandfathers. Heads of Two Cows. Give or take a millennium, the paintings are 20,000 years old. The two red cows may have been painted centuries apart. We'll never know. At least one cave painter understood how cattle communicate. In this detail, they face each other as if they're angry or checking one another out. One cow has an S-shaped horn. The other one has a drooping horn, like a new moon in a low, late sky. As a cattle inspector on my rounds 42 years ago, I saw this every day in feedlots or pastures. Without the time, it's hard to learn if a particular cow dislikes another. At 15, my grandfather fled his father's farm to be a ranch hand at Fort Sisseton. He already understood the emotional lives of cattle. I never completed that education, and I still envy Gramps' savvy. Today, he'd be 124. The spring after Gramps died, I began inspecting herds for the livestock board. Dad was 50 and had been a meat cutter since he was 13. Cattle were a source for your family's well-being, Timothy. And like cave painters, your ancestors studied them. Gramps taught you cowboy songs, and Dad always said grace. Of course, I ran through all of those cave paintings in the book, and I still was cranked up, so I picked up the book, The American Sublime, Landscape Paintings from 1820 to 1880, and wrote some work. I did a couple of them in here. This is called The Course of Empire by Thomas Cole. In fact, I'll read it. It's a series of 5 paintings, and he goes through the arc of empire, starting with the savage state. So I'll do that one first. The Course of Empire, the Savage State. Quote, dangerous exhilaration, unquote, says a commentator of Cole's painting. The winds are strong, the hills ripple, the hunters, man and wolf, are at the chase, and a golden mountain rises from the mists. Dad's cousin Bill was born, raised, and hunted on the Dakota Prairie. Whenever he'd visit our cabin in the woods, after 2 days he would say he had to go. I want to die in the wide open spaces. My wife knew a boy who had drowned and was revived after being dead many minutes. He was never the same. His curiosity about death led him to live only for exhilaration. He hated color, and as a man he bragged that those girls on milk cartons had disappeared because he had killed them. His mother shot him to prevent a continuing spree of murders. When I turned a curve on the Denali Park Road, a blonde grizzly was gobbling berries 20 feet from the car. My soul spread into the autumnal colors, the toothy sky, and Denali's white gold snow. A year earlier, I stood in half light below Mexico's cathedral altar. I stared at the gray crypts that held the remains of their dead bishops. Who wants to end that way? I'd rather be bear shit in the woods. Okay. I'll do just a couple more here and then we'll. So, here's the course of empire. Again, this is part of the pastoral or Arcadian state. Just for your kid, I'm using paintings as primers to pull up the inspiration. So, the poems aren't necessarily about the pictures, but with metaphorical and mythic thinking, they are connected. The course of empire, the pastoral or Arcadian state. I was treading water, and my wife was drying herself on the shore. The air shivered with the first hint of the cool front on a 90-degree day. We laughed as a dragonfly landed on the crown of my head. My cousin rowed past, fishing that small lake in his boat. The damp haze was spinning, and pine tree silhouettes poked the yellow sky. One loon called from the bay as another flew in. A friend writes dragonfly haikus with all the gentleness and delicacy of his totemic friends. Then, in one poem, he writes beautifully of a kingfisher's beak clamping down on a black meadowhawk dragonfly. I lived a pastoral life for years. Many folks shared that dream, facing nature's teeth. Our teeth gnashed when a marriage ended or a home burned down. Back to the landers went back to the city. My dad admired my efforts. In 1936, his family lived in a tent at his grandpa's farm, the hottest summer and the coldest winter of the century. Dad liked to say, the good old days were shit. Okay, just two more. The course of empire destruction. My house is a mile from the state fairgrounds. Parked cars line our street. Exhausted bodies stuff the shuttle buses. This year the crowds are historically large and the lines are long. Vendors make a fortune on our cravings for corn dogs, mini donuts, and deep fried food. Aromas are to those cravings what the siren songs were to Ulysses. A purposely empty wallet is my rope and mast. At 19, I worked the fair as a street sweeper. I earned enough to drive to the coast and see the oceans for the first time. I ran out of cash and made it home just in time to see my brother John before he died. I took the call from the hospital where Mom held Johnny in her arms. He was 9 years old. I woke the rest of the family and we wept. Christopher was the youngest and had just turned 4. Last night, my grandson and I biked to the ice cream shop. He's 8. I was 9 the first time I ate there. In the neighborhood, yard signs protest the demolition of St. Andrew's Church, where Johnny was laid in his casket. Tonight, I hear fireworks exploding overhead at the state fair as it ends its run. I remember one sermon at St. Andrew's. The priest said that for each of us, the apocalypse is a certainty. But for the world and others, life will go on. There's the last one. This is called Late Twilight. It's a painting by Sanford Robinson Gifford. How much beauty lives in the red sky, or in the clouds and light that reflect off a lake on a quiet evening. Light and land and love hold a quiet red, a Valentine's red, a menstrual red, an empty barn red. How much passion is in the red ochre of a Wyoming mountain, in the red light at a strip club, in a neon red no vacancy sign, in an ogre's greed, or in a torch song before it becomes the blues. Red clay stuck to my boots in the Badlands after I touched a red streak of dirt on a polychrome hill, while bison grazed on the last green grass beneath the cottonwood's yellow leaves. In Washington, I drank the red ale my son brewed on his porch. From a red chair in Idaho, I watched my wife sketch beautiful green junipers, and I saw the red hills endlessly birthing hot springs. At Christmas, I'll hang red stockings on the mantle, adorn the tree with red paper chains, and I will give thanks for the red life I live. Red clouds at night, a poet's delight. It's a promise for tomorrow. So, we'll take a break. There's some wine, some lemonade,